Justice. Today is January 28, 2024. This hearing is being recorded. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcasted on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, Files Channel 964. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.ps@boston.gov and will be made part of the record and available to all councilors. Public testimony will be taken at the end of this hearing. Individuals will be called in the order in which they signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. If you are interested in testifying in person, please add your name to the sign-up sheet near the entrance of the chamber. If you are looking to testify virtually, please email our Central Staff Liaison, Shane Pack, at shane.pack@boston.gov for the link, and your name will be added to the list. Today's hearing is on docket number 0163, order for a hearing to discuss enhanced public safety measures during large events in Boston. This matter was sponsored by Councilors Aaron Murphy, Ed Flynn, and Enrique Pepin, and was referred to the committee on January 8, 2025. Today, I am joined by my colleagues in order of arrival: Councilor Aaron Murphy, Councilor Ed Flynn, and Councilor Enrique Pepin. We also received a letter of absence from the chair of the committee, Councilor Brian Worrell, or vice chair, I should say. Before we begin, I'd like to just ask folks to please silence their phones and devices. At this time, I'd like to provide an overview of the panelists the committee invited to testify on behalf of the administration. We invited Adrian Jordan, Chief of Emergency Preparedness for the Office of Emergency Management, Michael Cox, Commissioner of the Boston Police Department, Ryan Walsh, Director of the Boston Regional Intelligence Center for the Boston Police Department, James Hooley, Chief of Emergency Medical Services, Paul Burke, Fire Commissioner and Chief of the Boston Fire Department, Joshua Franklin Hodge, Chief of Streets, and Today Baker, Manager of Special Events, Consumer Affairs, and Licensing. Before we get into the panelists who are here with us today, I'd like to ask my colleagues for their opening remarks, starting with the lead sponsor, Councilor Murphy. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for being here. I filed this hearing order back on January 8th, our first meeting back for the term, and was joined, thank you, by Councilor Pepin and Flynn on enhanced public safety measures during large events in Boston. And we all know that we have many large events, celebrations across the city, so it's important conversation that, I believe, despite, when tragedies happen other places, it's something we should always be kind of checking in on and making sure we're prepared. So good morning, and thank you to my colleagues, the city officials who are here, and community members to have this important conversation. I feel this is an essential opportunity to discuss how we can enhance public safety during large events in Boston. I attend many, grew up here, and as everyone knows, I'm a strong supporter of making sure that we're always advocating and making sure our first responders have all the resources they need. And our city is known for its vibrant parades, festivals, and open street events that bring together residents and visitors from all walks of life. These gatherings are a celebration of our culture and community, but they also require thoughtful planning and coordination to ensure public safety. Recent incidents across the country have underscored the importance of proactive security measures, and today's discussion is about making sure Boston is doing everything possible to protect our public spaces. And there were several first responders who had reached out to me after the events in New Orleans, and just talking about what supports they would feel would be, important to be. I guess the words they used too were like consistent and deliberate, not like after the fact, or maybe some do it, but not always. So it's important to me that this discussion focuses on strategies that maybe use physical barriers to mitigate threats, improved intelligence sharing among agencies, and strengthen emergency preparedness and plans. And that we have a good understanding of the large events that we do host here in the city, and questions, as granular as at what size, right, of an event does another procedure or expectation kind of kick in. So that's important for me to make sure I leave this meeting, this hearing, with that understanding. I do just want to explain just kind of some housekeeping that we invited, and thank you, Chair, for listing the other administration panel that we did invite, but I do just want to explain why I did believe that their presence here would be important. So Commissioner Cox of the Police Department, as the leader of the Boston Police Department, he's responsible for overseeing law enforcement operations across the city, and his presence is critical to discuss current safety protocols, coordination during large events, and any additional measures needed to enhance security. James Hooley, who is the Chief of Emergency Medical Services, his role leads the Boston EMS, ensuring rapid emergency response during public events. His testimony will provide insight into emergency preparedness, response times, and medical support strategies for large gatherings. Commissioner Burke of the Fire Department, who oversees fire safety operations, inspections, and emergency response, and his input is essential today for discussing fire safety measures, emergency evacuation plans, in coordination with other agencies during large-scale events. Thank you, Adrian, for attending. As Chief of Emergency Preparedness, you are responsible for planning and coordinating citywide response to emergencies, and you could help address how Boston prepares for these large-scale events, so I do appreciate that you're here to talk about that. Ryan Walsh, or some representative from the BRIC, which is the Boston Regional Intelligence Center. As we know, it plays a vital role in gathering and analyzing intelligence to prevent security threats. They would have been able to provide insight on threat assessment, coordination with law enforcement agencies, and how intelligence is used to enhance public safety. And lastly, which is something many conversations came up, some of these tragic events across the country. And one of the things, I remember like going to the Macy Day Parade or other events that are large crowds, that the city uses other city trucks, like trash trucks and others, to block streets. So was hoping that Yasha from the Chief of Streets was here to discuss the measures often require collaboration between law enforcement and transportation agencies, and he would have been able to discuss the feasibility of implementing physical barriers, street closures, and other traffic-related safety measures to protect large crowds. So I just want to put that out there. I'm going to pass it over, or the chair will, to my other lead sponsors, but just wanted to say that I'm disappointed that the administration did not send our panelists, and unfortunately, it's not protocol or policy. Councilor Finn, you've been here for 8 years now. You would know that when we invite panelists, you don't have to always then follow it up with an explanation, but unfortunately lately, a lot of the hearings that we've been holding, we ask for administration to come in to have, a meaningful conversation, and if they don't attend, then we're not able to, use this time productively. So that being said, I will end there and look forward to what we can discuss this day.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the panelists for being here, for respecting this body, for being here. Captain Conley, Boston Police Department, does an exceptional job providing critical public safety support to residents and visitors and working with communities across the city. So I have great respect for him and want to thank the emergency management team as well for being here. I am also disappointed that the Boston Fire Department is not here. The Chief of Streets is not here, part of the Transportation Department. The EMS chief is not here. Mr. Chair, I did see the fire commissioner's car in the executive garage this morning. Do we know if he might be running late, or is he just not showing up, or is there any reason that he hasn't been, that he's not here right now?
Yeah, no, great question. Thank you, Councilor. I did not get confirmation that Commissioner Burke was going to be in attendance today, so I do not believe that he will be joining us today.
So Commissioner Burke, what about Commissioner Cox?
Yeah, I think I think the panelists that we have here from the administration will be the panelists that will move forward with today. But we did send out invitations to those individuals that you mentioned.
I mean, my questions would be related to, might be fire, might be traffic, and slash what impact the streets have, closing down streets on particular parades. I know parades as well as anyone in the city, and how important it is to shut down side streets leading up to a parade or a major event. But I do need to have a conversation with the appropriate person from Public Works, from Transportation, from the chief of streets that organize that particular department or departments. So that's where my focus is. And EMS also plays a critical role, whether it's at the Boston Marathon, whether it's at a parade, public safety support slash medical outreach, access to inroads to hospitals are also critical. That's where I focus my attention on. Have we heard anything from the EMS chief?
Again, we send out the invitations, and again, I think the three panelists that we have here from the administration will be testifying. Again, those other individuals were invited, but it is my understanding that the emergency management team should and would be able to answer some of those other questions, and to the best of their ability. I'm also happy as chair to file questions on your behalf and be able to work with your office. But for the time being, the three panelists that we have here today are the ones that we're going to continue the conversation with.
Are we able to take a 30-minute recess and come back and determine if the department heads are coming here? I do expect when I invite a department head to a hearing, I do expect that they attend. I think people know that's what I require when I invite people to a meeting. And I know it's different from other colleagues. They're not sticklers about that. But when I do invite someone to a meeting, I do expect that they are here. And I expect that they communicate with the chair, communicate with the team on how and what the logistics are, but just to not show up. I do want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't want to say any more, but I do want to give them an opportunity to come here if they're in the building and testify. So I would request a 30-minute recess to find out if they are coming, and give them an opportunity to be here. I think they are in the building, and I would rather wait and respect their time as well, and give them an opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. I really respect your remarks. I think in the interest of time, I do want to continue with the conversation. I think what we can do is that it is my understanding that the other individuals that were invited are not attending this hearing. And because we received that confirmation that they're not coming, I don't believe that a 30-minute recess will make them come. So I do want to continue this conversation. What I'll do is that I'll have my team, who's present in here today, just reach out to IGR, and I think IGR is here today, and just making sure that, if they are in the building and they're able to come, that they can come. And I'd be happy to sit them after this panel if they decide to come. But for the interest of time and just respect for the people who are here with us today.
I know, I understand, and I want to be respectful to the panel that's here, because I have respect for all three of the gentlemen sitting here, and I've worked with them, and I respect what they do. But as a city councilor that represents a key part of the city, South Boston, Chinatown, the South End, I take these issues very seriously. Public safety. I work 7 days a week. I haven't taken a vacation in 7 years. And I'm a stickler for details. And when someone doesn't show up for one of the meetings, it's a reflection. It's a reflection on the body. You know, you just don't have the luxury to say, I'm going to go to the meeting or I'm not going to the meeting. If you're invited to the city council to testify, you attend the meeting.
Absolutely.
But I do think, Mr. Chair, that we should give them an opportunity to be here and hear directly from them that why they're not coming.
Oh, absolutely. So this is what I'll do, Councillor Flynn. I'll allow you to finish your open remarks, and then my other two colleagues who are in attendance to give their open remarks. We'll take a 5-minute recess break to just check in on that, and then return to.
All right.
Does that sound good?
I think that's fair. Yeah.
All right.
And I also want to acknowledge Ed Cash as well, who's an expert in the public safety field as well, for being here for his important role and his professionalism as well. Boston holds many public events every year, including a number of parades that draw many people into the city locally and across the world, really. This includes First Night, the upcoming Evacuation Day Parade, the Boston Marathon, many ethnic festivals. This year's terror attack in New Orleans on New Year's Day highlights the importance of public safety and the effectiveness of security measures such as physical barriers, strategically placed vehicles to protect residents who are participating in these large gatherings, and intelligence gathering as well. In 2013, we experienced the Boston Marathon bombing, which killed 3 people, injured hundreds. As we plan ahead for these events, I look forward to hearing from the administration team that's currently here, including how we work with city, state, and our federal partners as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Pepin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. Thank you to the panelists for being here today. I respect a lot of the work you all do. I've had the opportunity to speak to some of you already, and I see Matt Kearney over there, who I've worked closely with in the past, so thank you for being here. I wanted to be a co-sponsor on this hearing because I know how important safety is to the residents of the city of Boston, and we have a lot of beautiful events that partake across the entire year. And for me, I witnessed something personally last year in August during the Dominican Festival, where it wasn't inside the festival, but right next to it, where there was a shooting. And I genuinely think that with better planning ahead of time, it could have been prevented. And I believe that there is solutions to these situations. And I believe that a lot of our groups that do organize our parades, our festivals, or any event that happened in the city of Boston just deserve that opportunity to have a safe event. So that's why I'm here today, to have this conversation and to be part of the solution and to be creative of how we make sure that Boston continues to be that safest city in the nation. So thank you all for the work that you do. I'll turn back my time to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pepin. This time we've also been joined by Council President Lijen. You have the floor for open remarks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the sponsors. I want to thank members of the administration for being here and for your dedication to our city, to our safety, making sure that we are a safe city as a large city, and making sure that we are as prepared as we can be. So I just want to thank you for all the work that you do on behalf of our residents and on behalf of our city, responding to all sorts of public safety emergencies and making sure that our communities feel that we are responding appropriately. So just want to be here to say thank you, and I know that you all are doing everything you can. So thank you.
Thank you, Council President. So as promised, we are going to take a quick recess of 5 minutes, and we will return back with our panelists. Please stay tuned. Thank you. We're in a brief recess. back in session. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. So what we're going to do is that we're going to move forward with the panelists that we have here today. We're going to allow all of you to give, or whoever has opening statements, and then we'll open it up for councilor questions. So I know we've combined both panels, so if we can just first just introduce, if you can just introduce yourself, your title, your position, your role, and then we can go ahead with opening statements after that. You can start however you may.
Let's go down the line. Good morning. Matt Carney, Deputy Chief with the Office of Emergency Management.
Good morning. Adrian Jordan, Chief of Emergency Preparedness.
Good morning. Captain Tim Connolly, Boston Police Department, Homeland Security.
Good morning. Ed Cash, President of Frontier Security.
Great. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here, and again, for your patience. We now will proceed with opening remarks, and you can go in the order that you all want.
I just have a brief opening statement. So good morning, members of the council and distinguished guests. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today about the vital role of emergency management in safeguarding our community during large-scale public events. Mitigation. Our first priority is to reduce the potential impacts of disasters before they occur. This involves comprehensive risk assessment and implementing measures such as infrastructure improvements and public education campaigns. Preparedness. Preparedness is a year-long process that involves extensive planning, training, and collaboration with various city agencies. A prime example is the extensive planning that goes into an event like the Boston Marathon. This iconic event requires months of coordination among multiple agencies, including law enforcement, medical teams, public works, and transportation departments. We develop detailed emergency plans, conduct numerous drills, and ensure that all stakeholders are prepared to respond to any situation that may arise. The Emergency Operations Center, for a quick scope. At the heart of our emergency operation efforts is the Emergency Operations Center. The EOC serves as a centralized hub for coordination and communication during both planned events and unplanned incidents. It is equipped with advanced technology to monitor real-time conditions, track resource allocations, and facilitate rapid decision-making. During events like the Boston Marathon, the EOC brings together representatives from all partner agencies, ensuring seamless communication and a unified response to any situation. Third, our response. When an incident occurs, our coordination response efforts are crucial. We leverage the expertise and resources of our partner agencies to ensure swift and effective response, minimizing harm and protecting our residents and visitors. Our recovery phase, which is our final phase. The recovery phase focuses on restoring our community to normalcy as quickly as possible. This includes support to those affected and rebuilding infrastructure, always with an eye towards building resilience for the future. In conclusion, councilors, the emergency management is not just about responding to crises as they arise. It's a continuous year-long effort that requires the dedication and cooperation of all our city agencies. The planning that goes into events like the Boston Marathon exemplifies the extensive coordination and preparation required to ensure the safety and security of our community, with the Emergency Management Operations Center serving as the cornerstone of these efforts. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chief. Does anyone else have any opening remarks? Okay, you all together. And then, Ed, if you want to give your opening remarks.
Yeah, good morning, Chairman Santana, members of the Boston City Council. Thank you for having me here today. Councilor Murphy, thank you for reaching out. My name is Ed Cash, lifelong resident of Winthrop, Mass, and currently the president of Frontier Security. We work on several security issues around the country, including supporting many special events around New England, including the city of Boston. I was proud to be appointed by President Bush to help be part of the team that stood up the U.S. Department of Homeland Security in 2003 and have been working on security issues ever since. I think I met Captain Conley here about 20 years ago. BPD was one of the first agencies to embed police agencies within Homeland Security when it was stood up. In the security role for special events, a security assessment is usually done to determine the level of staffing and other security measures like different technology and barriers needed to make events safe and secure for attendees. Each event is always different and you usually don't have every possible resource that you may want, so you have to improvise. Key piece of this assessment is the work done by the Boston Regional Intelligence Center, the BRIC, who assess the potential threat level to an event and will make recommendations on how much staffing and technology to have at an event. City of Boston is a hot destination for big events and will be for many, many more years to come. City has extensive experience with events like the Boston Marathon, 4th of July at the Hat Shell, Boston Calling Music Festival, the Italian Feast on the North End, annual Caribbean Festival, and by virtue of the success of our many, many sports teams, we have many championship parades. 2026 will be a challenging year with Seal Boston coming back to Boston, while at the same time the FIFA World Cup will be here with thousands of international events attending events around the city. I believe Boston has one of the best multi-agency coordinated plans in the country for these many events, but yes, there are always ways for improvement, and that changes year after year as these threats become more complicated. Why do we do such a good job? Because you have the Boston Emergency Management that coordinates across many federal, state, and local public safety agencies and private sector partners like myself on a specific plan for each event. This is not just Boston Police, Fire, EMS operations, but numerous others that support the city in this effort. All of these exercises, all of these agencies I mentioned are included in the planning months and months before events, and oftentimes these are involved with exercises together where potential threat scenario is played out, and these agencies work together side by side, responding to an attack and play out how they would respond if the attack was real. There is always an after-action report, and role players are shown areas where they can improve in the response. 3 lives were lost during the Boston Marathon attack. That number should have been a lot higher if it was not for the quick, coordinated response by numerous agencies involved in responding, especially Boston EMS and their partners. The city led an exercise for a similar scenario a few years ago before, and we're ready for something similar like this tragic day in 2013. In closing, yes, we can always do more. There is never a 100% security plan. There are always going to be some gaps in a plan. As our adversaries develop new methods and plans of attack, we also have to adapt on our end to better prepare our plan. Whether it is new drone technology detection tools to detect the somewhat new drone threat, or ways of involving the public more with new tools for them to report something suspicious, there are always going to be ways for us to improve our plan. Thank you for your time today. It is an honor to be here and discuss ways in which we can improve our security posture for many future special events our great city will have. Look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your testimony. This time, I would like to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councilor Durkin from District 8 and also Councilor Fernandez Anderson from District 7. I will now turn it over to my colleagues in order of arrival for questions, starting with the lead sponsor, Councilor Murphy. You have the floor.
Thank you. And like we talked about with certain panelists not here, I don't have any specific questions, but I do just have a statement. And thank you, Ed, and the other comments. To have, a public safety plan that is the best it can be, we have to be working together with all the departments. We do that, but like you touched upon, there is always room to do better, and a lot of the things you talked about doing practice runs and making sure we have the most up-to-date technology and all of that, and what types of transportation protocols could we put into place were the reasons, and I already went through the reasons why the other panelists, the department heads from the other departments were important here. So I do look forward to a productive hearing when we have all of the other department heads in front of us so that we can talk about coordination and how do we support each other and make sure also going into budget season, it's always important that we on the council understand if there are staffing needs or new technology or other supports that each department needs, that it has to come from the commissioners and the department heads to tell us that. So looking forward to that. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Just before I pass it over to Councilor Flynn, I just want to make it clear that both Chief Jordan, Deputy Director Kearney, and Captain Connolly are here representing the administration. And then President Ed Cash is the President of Frontier Security Strategies, who is not part of the administration, but is an expert in this field. So I just want to make that clarification for my colleagues who are joining. I will now pass it over to Councilor Flynn for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to say thank you to Adrian, to Matt, to Ed, and to Captain Conley for being here, for the important role, for your professionalism in keeping residents safe. Captain Conley, I remember when you were a youth basketball coach up at Gate of Heaven in the Tynan School, helping kids and mentoring kids up in South Boston and Dorchester. So just want to say thank you, Captain, for the important work you have played, not just on public safety, but also helping young people across the city as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Pepin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you all for the panelists for being here. I guess I'll start off with the Captain. My question is regarding the special events permitting process and the collaboration there is with the Boston Police Department. Obviously, a cultural group has to apply for it, and I know that today Baker does an amazing job with the process over at special events, and I believe BPD is part of that process to ensure that there's safety measures in place for any event. I'm going to use the Dominican Festival as the example just because, one, I was there, was part of trying to help them with the process. During the festival, I realized that Circuit Drive wasn't closed around Franklin Park. The festival happens on Franklin Park.
Correct.
And what happened is that there were a lot of cars that were able to park themselves right next to the park, and they were hanging out, not even inside of the festival, but more so on Circuit Drive, creating their own environment.
Right.
And that is where the shooting happened. So speaking with the police department after that, I thought about why is it that we didn't shut down Circuit Drive when the festival started in the first place. So I just wanted to get a sense from you, what is the process to even have that conversation about shutting down something like Circuit Drive or anywhere else down across the city where it might, like it naturally shut down either way because there were people literally on the street, no matter even if it wasn't open or not. So might as well just shut it down and only allow permitted vehicles to actually go up if they're a part of the event or not. So what is the process for an applicant to say, all right, we think this road should be shut down, or if the BPD has that experience or the transportation department to say, we should shut this down?
Well, thank you for the question. It's more of a first responder's answer to, whether we need an ambulance to come through. The police department decides to shut it down. We will put barriers out, some of the bicycle racks, we call them, along there. I know we did that on Circuit Drive. We didn't go all the way down, and one of the after action that we did in our after action report was to continue all the way down Circuit Drive till the end. So we did take a look at that. We didn't see that in years past. That was something that was unique to this year. So we did take a look at that and put that into our after action report so it wouldn't happen again, sir.
No, that's great to hear, and I think the reason why it happened this year is because the event's growing.
It is growing.
And there's a lot of folks that just want to attend the event, and not just this specific festival, but I think every festival in Boston is just getting more attention. Boston is a good place to be at during the summertime. So I think that I'll be working really closely with the Special Events Department and BPD just to have into consideration what type of measures we should take place moving forward with any cultural event in the city of Boston.
So part of that too, I just wanted to mention that when the person who's applying for the special event, they'll give us a number of people in attendance.
Yeah.
And I think that may have, like you said, grown a little bit this year from the number that they said that was going to attend to the number that actually attended. That was way off, right?
Right.
So we took a look at that in the after action report and put in that extra barrier system for this year.
That's a very good point, and I think that's something that we can also work with the applicants to make sure that there's a proper estimate. So thank you for that. Again, I appreciate your time. I'll reserve the rest of my questions for others. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor, if I can.
Yes.
I just had so this is interesting. So same as Dominican Festival, Caribbean Festival, same challenges. And we've had extensive conversations last year. We were talking to BPD about how do we structure those festivals a little different than presently constituted, right? The BPD is, because of the area, it always provides challenges. And in terms of shutting down streets, the other issue for them is like, all right, if they don't congregate on Circuit Drive, they park somewhere else, right? So is it that Is it that we designate an off-site parking site, shuttle people to the festivals? So we talked about it last year, so I just wanted to confirm that we had been talking about that stuff last year. Just, you know what I mean? So it's just that these conversations are ongoing, and we just need to get in a room with the festival organizers for these outdoor festivals, the festivals that happen at Franklin Park, so we can come up with a strategy that best works for the citizens that are attending the festivals, the property themselves, so we can mitigate some of these issues. So I just wanted you to know that we were having conversations about how do we do those festivals a little different.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, may I respond?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for that, because I think that that's such a vital part of the conversation where not even just for Franklin Park, but there was another event on the Jamaica Way, I believe, as well, that cars were parking on the lawn. And that was state property, so the state troopers started to get involved, so it became a whole other issue. But I remember a lot of folks parking around Four Corners and just walking over to Franklin Park instead of parking closer to the park. And a lot of people decided to do that. So I think that if we start going that route, giving people an opportunity to just spread the what am I trying to say? Where they can park, what opportunities there is. That's a great conversation. I'm glad that you're having that. And if there's any future conversation about that, I'd love to be part of it.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Pepen. Councilor Durkin, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Chair. I saw what was on our docket today, and I was really excited because having some of the biggest institutions, but also some of the biggest stadiums, you know, TD Garden and Fenway Park in District 8, I think about large events a lot. And I recently, I think this was last fall, was at the Fenway Park's tactical skills training with the Boston Fire Department and got to meet a lot of the EMS team there. That was an incredible partnership between all of there were firefighters from around the state training at Fenway Park, climbing up you know, all of the infrastructure, and that was really interesting to watch. But I also have been really involved with activating Kenmore Square for Marathon Monday. We had the first activation last year, and I know anything with the marathon, we are really careful about any changes that we make, but it was an honor to partner with Captain Sweeney and the police department around that activation alongside Sitco, and you know, because it's underneath the Sitco sign. And so I'm excited I know we're starting to plan for that this year. And I just wanted to shout out to Colin Leiden, a former Boston Police Department alumni who now runs security at Fenway Park. So I know a lot of the you know, folks who serve for the police department end up going on to run security for other groups, and I appreciate the coordination that they have with the police department. I wanted to talk a little bit about the funding of the BRIC grants and just how important that is to funding sort of the homeland security but also safety efforts across the city. It's part of why I have been so supportive in my recent votes around all of these BRIC grants, and why I'm supportive of the BRIC in general is just the ability for us to be nimble as a city and also have sort of a regional approach to security. So I was just curious, Captain, if you had any thoughts on that.
Sure, I'm also the jurisdictional point of contact for the URC grant, which is the Urban Area Security Initiative. And each year the grant sets aside a certain amount of money to fund the BRIC. It also funds analysts within the BRIC. And part of their routine, certain analysts, they have the arduous task of defining for something like, as you brought up, the Boston Marathon, the tactics, techniques, and procedures that are, first of all, in a global context, then what is done, you know, nationally and domestically, and then they take a look at it through Boston specific, and they'll come up with some type of information sharing product that they get out to all first responders to enhance the event. And there's also something that I want to talk about, and Mr. Cash spoke about earlier. There's also a designation by DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, that's called a SEER, and it's a special event assessment response, and that designates, like if it's a SEER 4, it's kind of low, but if it's a SEER 1, that'll designate the ability to bring in federal assets as well. So I just wanted to mention that from earlier, that there's different, depending on the size of the event matters how much help we get from our federal partners, right? And something like as big as the marathon, we definitely get regional response from, especially bomb squads throughout the region, all the way up to including Maine. We'll get enough, we call them joint hazardous assessment teams that come in and do different things and protect in different ways. So there's a lot of different things, a lot of different coordination that goes on federally, state, and locally, depending on the size of the event. And I just wanted to mention that.
That's really helpful, and I do remember there was a street takeover of Marlborough Street, in my time as a city councilor, which I was really proud of our police department. No one was injured, no one was hurt, in a situation that could have been very dangerous. And I remember getting the report afterwards and speaking with the BRIC about what they were watching nationwide in terms of these street takeovers. So I think through that instance, I really saw the power of there being folks that are doing research about what's happening at, and talking to other fusion centers across the country and knowing what reports are happening there. So they already sort of were well resourced and researched on that specific subject. So, and then I wanted to just turn to something positive, but I think we do have, I think you mentioned this, Ed, there are a lot of events happening in 2026. We also, I'm particularly focused on, those that are on the Freedom Trail and those that are coming to talk about the 250th. Just curious sort of what we can expect and what kind of coordination is going on behind the scenes to prepare for those events.
Yeah, I'm not specifically involved yet with any FIFA planning or Seal Boston just yet, but yeah, it'll be all hands on deck and private security partners, because your staff is limited these days, but you bring in outside, BU police, BC police, environmental police, other jurisdictions, Maine, New Hampshire. 2026 is going to be a very busy year. FIFA, Seal Boston, then the feasts happen, then we'll see what our sports teams do in 2026. But yeah, it's all hands on deck, and technology is huge too. Cameras and using BPD drones and other drones if we have them to just try to mitigate the lack of bodies that you have. So technology is huge, the intelligence is big, and then you have to take what you have and then present the plan. Then just go with that.
I don't want to get into drones and UAPs. I feel like that's not germane to
it's
this
the hot
hearing.
thing.
But I did run into Amy Yandel, our director of special events, in the elevator, so it felt very serendipitous. She said this is a very busy time for them in preparing for all these 2026 events, and that's an incredible office, and they do such a great job with preparing and working with the police department and working with all these other groups. So excited about what's ahead, and thank you all for your leadership. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Durkin. Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the lead sponsor. Good morning. Thank you for being here and for your work and dedication. I do think that this conversation, while the safety of all residents and visitors is paramount, we do have to focus it, or we must at least ensure that the measures are particularly surrounding disproportionately impacted communities. In terms of, when we look at when we look at increasing public safety, are we doing that in an equitable sense? Meaning, how are we ensuring that we are addressing communities that are typically, by research, when over-policed, over-criminalized, or rather, more issues arise somehow from these researchers. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we are transparently talking about looking at the research and looking at how BRIC can be helpful, and determining how we can use these tools to be able to enhance public safety, but while doing it in a way that we are ensuring that we're culturally appropriate for these communities, especially in communities where are celebrating diverse sort of social events, festivals, and all these cultural parades and in terms of figuring out also measures and how we're measuring if we are doing that efficiently in a way that people feel safe, but also people are feeling respected. And that goes both ways. I think there's a natural distrust for some reason in Boston. I think, and I welcome my colleagues not to make their comments and leave right after, but I think that I think there's a natural distrust between community and public safety, and I think there is a way, I'm very hopeful that there is a way that we can build that trust and we can have conversations in building relationships in communities where people feel safe as well as police officers feel respected. You have a job to do. In Boston particularly, I think the numbers are different. Growing up here, I've always had a very good relationship with police officers, public safety in general, and I'm not sure what the solutions are, whether it be through community policing or are we looking at follow-up meetings with festival attendees / organizations that are facilitating these parades, and looking at surveying where are we, how did we do, and how can we improve that. And if you have that already, I'd like just for you to comment on, have you implemented any of these measures, or are you looking at any type of cultural competency, or are you already doing that in order to ensure that, again, one, you're building relationship, two, you're building relationships so you can build trust, and two, are you following up to ensure some sort of quality assurance thereafter?
That's a great question, thank you. I know that the Special Events Group, which is not just the Boston Police Department, but it's all first responders and it's city government as well. I know they meet prior to any event, and I know they meet after to ensure that things that went wrong one year don't happen again the next year. But I will take what you said back to the Special Events Group in Boston and have them put together some type of a program to ensure that there is, as you said, equity and everything that you wanted in there. I don't know if I'm the right person to answer if that's being done right now. I'm more of a tactical person.
I see.
Putting the plans together.
I see. It is interesting. Sorry, Mr. Chair, what was our time allowed?
Yeah, I'm giving every councilor 7 minutes. You're up to 4 right now.
Thank you. It's interesting how, you look at these events and we need officers and we need a lot of them, and this is true. For Boston particularly, we can't necessarily use other cities or states' research or numbers in terms of police relationship or police need or not needed. I think here we are an exciting city that have a lot of events, a lot of things going on, fire department as well, right? We need all of that. And then we tend to talk about police reform in terms of in a very sort of blanket way, in a general sense. And I think that we have to sort of individually or be more specific about Boston, what that culture is and what those numbers are. And I think we are different here. What would you say in terms of increasing numbers? I guess, how do we do that to meet the need while building, again, those relationships so that people are not feeling over-policed?
To answer the first part of your question, there's definitely, we do use outside agencies, especially in bicycle patrols during a special event. You'll see that. We'll work with our state partners, especially our state police department in Massachusetts, to come in with, if we don't have enough officers, we'll ask them to, bring in maybe a squad of 100 or so, depending on the size of the event. And we've done that in the past. Sometimes we'll use some of our UASI partners to come in. With special expertise, maybe as bomb techs and different things, or K9. So there's different reasons we bring them in for different events. A lot of it's behind the scene, doing the stuff that maybe they'll come in, say there's an event, and they'll bring in bomb dogs and different tactical officers to come in and clean an area, make sure it's clear before the event, and then before we bring the people in. So we use them a lot of times. We use them that way as well.
My take on this, and I'll wrap up, Mr. Chair. My take on this, and I wish the rest of my colleagues were here, and I apologize that I was a bit late. I was in a meeting, because it's the interactions on things like this that then propel more relationship building for the other topics. So, for example, if they're really interested in brick, they'll show up and they'll say, tell me. And my point yesterday in the hearing was that the next time you're a part of the panel and you come to these hearings, you should ask the counselors, you should ask us how to do your job. Do we understand how to do your job before we ask you questions? Because then it sets the common ground of, you don't know what the heck I do, and I don't know much about what you do, but let's talk from a more humble beginning. Like, let's start from, you don't know, I don't know, let's put that on the table and let's figure it out together. And that's transparent collaboration, I think, builds more trust than, as opposed to, like, if we don't agree with the colleagues filing, then we don't show up, or we're busy. And when we do show up, then it's like, people leave, and then you are left with this. This is your job. You have to come to the panel. But it's, I apologize on behalf of folks that didn't make the time to come, because I think that, again, that we shouldn't underestimate these interactions, because that's the stuff that you walk away saying, I feel respected. People came and they didn't waste my time. And then hopefully building a more respectful relationship. So I'm extending that, and I'm hoping that we can continue to work together to build that. I think all of the things that we are saying here, it extends or it's perpetuated into community if we set the example that we're professionals and we care, and then we can say to you, these are our expectations. These are the things that we're looking for.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I have one question, and I'll turn it over again to my colleagues if they have any other questions. Earlier last fall, I had the opportunity alongside Councillor Flynn. We both had the opportunity to come to OEM and visit your facilities, get to know more about the work that you're all doing. When it comes to large events here in Boston happening, how much does the facility itself, right, where OEM is, how much coordination happens there, and how important is it to have a building that is up to code with the needs that you all need? I just wanted to have that understanding more.
Thank you. So we also sit on that special event committee, particularly to make sure that our public safety partners or city departments, when they're going through the process, just to see if there's any areas in which we can help support them. And that's typically a resource we will provide, is if an event is large enough, is the Emergency Operations Center, should that be activated to help facilitate a lot of that cross-department, cross-agency coordination at the local, state, and federal level. So it's crucial to our large events, and also crucial that the space is adequate to support our no-notice events in the event that something happens today or that we didn't plan for, that we have the technology and resources available to bring in any partner that may be needed to help support that incident response and kind of resource need. So we're constantly looking at ways in which to keep it up and functioning. It's an older building. It's got a lot of tech needs. I know that you've come down. We definitely welcome the council to come down as we get closer to the Boston Marathon, when we see the room prep for the largest planned space that we typically bring in the most amount of partners for. But it's really critical that we're using these planned events, if you will, to make sure that we're almost testing the operations center, making sure that's up and running. But it's really that larger hurricane, large flooding disaster where we need to operate in this space for multiple days, weeks on end, and make sure that the resources there are able to support staff, maybe not being able to go home, they're sleeping at the operations center. Is that space suitable for that? Do we have a kitchen, shower, things that you kind of don't think about when it's just a large event that we're operating for 6 to 12 hours and going home at the end of the day. So it's making sure that we're both prepared for that, but also that we have the ability to scale up and bring in more partners as needed. And that's definitely an area that we are struggling in and looking to find solutions on.
Oh, absolutely. I think you're being very kind in terms of how you, again, I had the opportunity to go and visit it with my colleague, and I think it's a big concern for me, just the space that you all have. And again, you mentioned an emergency of flooding or any of those type of big events. I don't think you have the adequate resources to be able to properly move forward with the emergency management. So I know as we're heading into budget season and conversations are happening, that's something that I'll be advocating for the OEM team. And I know that a lot of your staff is also covered by some of the grants, federal grants that we get, right? And I think that's also a big concern right now, especially as we're turning into a new administration and federal dollars may be questioned or we may lose some of that. So I think we as a city and as a council and the administration, I think also needs to, again, ahead of budget season, how do we think strategically about the OEM team, how crucial that you are to our operations here in the city of Boston and to our safety, and making sure that we can support you all. So I know that's something that I'm going to be advocating for this year, and I hope that my colleagues can join me in that fight. And I also encourage my colleagues, I know many of them have already gone, but go visit you all in Roxbury and tour the facility. You have an amazing team out there. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to the lead sponsor and then my other colleagues as well for any other questions that they may have, starting with Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. And I do just want to thank you, Adrian, Matthew, Captain Conley, and Ed for being here, taking your time out. I'm sorry that the other administrative panelists weren't here to have that conversation that we were hoping for that would have been more collaborative. I also do want to say today Baker, who's the Director of Special Events, I have on speed dial. I know many of my colleagues do. She's full of knowledge, always responsive, and if she doesn't have an answer, she connects us, myself in my office, to departments and people who do. And I know she was hoping to be part of this conversation but wasn't able to, and hopefully when we reschedule with the commissioners of our first responders who can give us direct answers that we really would like to have, she could be part of it then. But thank you all for being here. I respect your time and the work you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to highlight one issue, and I know it was referenced before about the situation in the Back Bay when these streets were overrun by bicycles and motorbikes and mopeds. It happens in many neighborhoods. I represent a small part of the Back Bay in the south end, half of the south end as well, in other areas. But I guess my question is maybe to the emergency management team. When a street is particularly overtaken by motorcycles or bikes and blocking traffic, as we have seen, such as on Marlborough Street, I think it was, or near the Public Garden area, but the impact it has on our first responders getting to a place, getting to a house, if there is a critical need for emergency services such as an ambulance or a fire. And my concern with that incident, it wasn't brought up. My concern was what would have happened if there was an elderly person near that area and the street was blocked off for a period of time. But what would have happened if there was an elderly person that had, God forbid, a heart attack? Every second counts, getting that person to a hospital. How was Boston Fire? Usually Boston Fire is the first on scene. But how would Boston Fire have responded to that particular incident in real time?
Maybe I can speak to this as a former fireman.
I didn't know that.
We don't address the firefighter in us. So if I were a chief where I just came from, and we had an incident where we thought the street was blocked off, that first call will come to, well, let me talk to emergency management first. So emergency management, we always have a person on duty. We have what's called a duty officer. So the duty officer is active on Slack, on like the Slack channels, if everybody's aware of the Slack channels. So our duty officer would get a ping probably from 311 that, hey, or 311 would reach out and say, or they would post in Slack that we have, right, maybe blockage, we have road blockage, street blockage on the scene. Our duty officer would be aware, and the duty officer would probably ping myself or Matt, and we start having conversations around, hey, who do we need to notify at this point? And then those conversations, obviously, 311, that notification also goes to police, obviously, and fire. But in terms of fire, when they show up and they have road blockages, their first call is to is fire alarm, which is their dispatch agency. That dispatch agency is then, from there, they need police. As soon as you get on scene, we were trained as officers or whoever's in charge, hey, look, assess the situation and acquiesce the needed help at that point. So first person on scene, incident commander, determines command of that incident at that point. Recognition is the key. And if the fire commissioner were here, he would tell you that they are well trained in recognition. So recognize what you need for resources at that point. So once they start the call, he calls the dispatcher, he needs help, we need police, we've got a scene. That's where the mitigation starts. Early recognition. And I can't stress it enough that if we recognize the need early enough, then that elderly lady that we might need to get to, that's the difference between a successful and an unsuccessful event. It's the early recognition.
Yeah, every second counts. No, thank you, Chief, for the response. Let me ask you one additional question, and it's more geared towards the fire department, but I know you can answer it also, and it's an emergency management question as well. I mentioned that I represent part of the south end. I love the south end. With some of the infrastructure changes to the streets in the south end, particularly maybe Tremont Street, where the sidewalk was bumped out, where the bike lane was bumped out, and then the sidewalk or the little area. But anyway, my point is, one firefighter has said to me, and he's very concerned about this, that there are particular places in the south end where a fire truck, if it pulls up, the ladder cannot reach the top of the building. And that's a major concern, a public safety concern, obviously. It's a public health concern as well. And are you familiar with that, Chief? And I do know it exists. In knowing that it exists now, is there something we can do now to address it, to hopefully ensure that that type of scenario doesn't take place, where we actually have to find out if the ladder can reach the building during a fire? Let's know now, but can you give me any guidance? Because I'm convinced that that is the scenario right now, and if it is the scenario right now, let's address it and make the infrastructure changes so that deadly scenario doesn't take place.
To be honest, Counselor, to speak on the capabilities of the fire apparatus at this juncture of my career, that's probably a question for the fire commissioner, more so than myself.
No, that's fair. That's fair. That was one of the major concerns. I wanted to have the fire commissioner here, but I do respect the work you have that you are doing.
Thank you.
Again, want to say thank you to the panelists for showing up, for showing respect to this city council, and thank you for the work that you have been doing. I am also disappointed that we didn't have the various city department heads here that could have helped us answer those particular questions. I also wish more of my colleagues were engaged in this issue. It's an issue that impacts every neighborhood across the city. And not showing up when we have experts here, it doesn't really set a positive example that we take these issues all that seriously. Just my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Pepin, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just want to take the opportunity to thank everyone for being here. I think that we all know this is a very important topic, and one that we will continue to talk about every day as it continues to evolve in our city. I also wanted to take the opportunity to say something in Spanish because I do have some folks that are watching the hearing. So quería dejarles saber que nosotros estamos trabajando muy fuerte con lo que son la administración de la alcaldesa para que haga un proceso fluido para cuando ustedes aplican para un evento, de los festivales, de las paradas, que ustedes se sientan seguros y que sepan que aquí tienen una representación fuerte para que ustedes tengan un evento muy productivo durante los años. I was just telling them that we are working very hard to make sure that they all have a successful event, no matter what the situations are, that they feel supported by us. But that's it. I just wanted to thank you. I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you, Councilor Verben, and great Spanish, by the way. Councilor Fernandez-Anderson, you have the floor if you have any further questions.
Thank you. I was impressed. I guess, Mr. Chair, is it okay if I just clarify the panelists and so that I can gear my questions only to who's here?
Correct, yep. So you want me to just read them who's here?
Yeah, and from where?
Yep. So we have, starting right here in this corner right here, we have Matthew Kearney, who's the Deputy Director of Office of Emergency Management. Next to him, we have Chief Adrian Jordan, who's the Chief of Emergency Preparedness for the Office of Emergency Management. We have Captain Conley, which represents, I don't know the...
Homeland Security. I'm also the jurisdictional point of contact on the UASI grant.
Thank you. And then we have, not part of the administration, we have Ed Cash, who's the president and an expert, but the president of Frontier Security Strategies and an expert in this field. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Sorry, I'm not the expert in this, but if I ask a question and it's just a pass, that's okay too. Is anyone here that actually works on this strategic planning before events or security or engaging community?
I work on planning the events, but not so much engaging the community.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just going to put on record, and hopefully we'll submit emails to the right person. Specifically, I just wanted to ensure that organizers from these communities are actively engaged in planning process for security protocols, and I am aware that they are engaged, but to what extent I would like to know. And then how are we ensuring that our enforcement approach is culturally competent and sensitive to the diverse populations attending? I alluded to cultural competency earlier, and then if this is for another team, that's okay too. Do we do any kind of cultural competency in terms of the events itself? Because I know there's like so many different types of.
There's just so many. I'm not that person, ma'am. I'm sorry.
No worries. Thank you. And then what steps are being taken to ensure that increased law enforcement presence at these events doesn't further erode trust? So like the more policing and the appearance of more policing can be a bit intimidating, and how are we, is there any type of like effort to outreach or engagement or communication that people can feel, you know, this is what it is and you can feel safe? And
Yeah, it's usually the number of attendees that determine the amount of police officers. So it's the size of the event that usually determines, you know, size and length of the event to secure it and police it, yeah.
And with this hearing, I mean, I know that sometimes it's like there's a priority, although we'll be understaffed over here, but this is a priority, and then you get enough officers. But this hearing, and particularly if I have it correct, this is specifically to discuss increasing law enforcement. So that we're not short-staffed, right? So that we're not.
Or to have a better
So-
understanding if we're prepared for large events.
So if there is a large event in the city, we won't pull people from the neighborhoods. We'll hire in addition to, right? You know, so there's, let's say
Like
it's,
security or other.
so there's a minimum manning that we are required to have in each one of our 11 districts. So if there was an event in East Boston, if we did pull people from, say, South Boston to attend, we would backfill with other officers in South Boston if we send officers over. So we don't pull from one section of the city to patrol or have a special event without ensuring that the minimum manning is met throughout the city, ma'am.
Oh, okay. So then the question, do you feel you have enough officers to always do that with the increase of events, or are we good? Like, have we
So-
resolved this hearing?
So yeah, that's a difficult question, and I'll answer it this way, that, no, I don't think we are. I think we're understaffed, and I think people have pulled it on their days off to fill in those other spots. So let's say I had a Saturday off, and then there was a special event somewhere. I may be ordered in to work over in a district to replace that person that's working somewhere else. So I just lost my day off. So I don't think it's an adequate staffing level. I think we're below.
I've always wondered, when I think about your job, I am of the opinion that you don't get paid enough, and it's the other way around. Like, it's not that I think officers should get less overtime and more pay, so that you just work a job and you live a quality of life and you go home and take care of your family. I think when you're inundated or added on stress of overtime, then there's, like, I don't know, is there sleep deprivation? Is there other types of issues that a normal human being would have to deal with on top of everything? And so, of course, you may get, and you do, people that are stressed out and overworked. And so, do you feel it is better to increase hiring more officers, or okay to just continue to overwork people in overtime?
Personally, I think we should have more officers with less overtime, right? Because like you said about that balance. And I know from reading studies that the life expectancy of a police officer is less than the average person.
Yeah.
Right.
I think you're third on the suicide list for careers.
There's a lot of factors into policing, right? So any way you can increase the balance of life off duty, I would always be for that personally and professionally.
And then added traumas that you may experience, visceral or just direct, that you have to maybe untreated or undiagnosed sort of traumas that you have to experience throughout this very high stress job, where you viscerally experience people having this bad opinion, negative opinion of officers, where you're just trying to do your job. You yourself could be a good person, and this general sense of cops are bad, and then how, you know what I mean? Like, we have so much work to do to get to a point where we build this relationship, because somehow we're all impacted. What affects you affects me. You have to go home to your life, and yet you're being generalized to the bad players, and now we're saying, no, we don't need no more cops. So I say again, or officers, sorry, I don't know if that's derogatory or not.
It's fine.
Okay, 5-0, no. And so for me, and I know all the advocates, they will come at me, but I've always been of this opinion. I've always said, more officers, more pay, no overtime. Just respect them as individuals, give them a job, respect that this is a very hard job. And if you're getting paid, I think it's like 70 or something, or in the 70s, early 70s, and then you compare that with other city jobs and what other city jobs have to do for the same amount of pay, I really don't think it's equitable. I think it's kind of ridiculous, actually. And then we have these expectations of you, and they say, well, cops just sit in the car. No, you don't. No, you don't. And so I, again, look forward to working more and learning more about how I can be of support. And the other questions, I think they all surround the sort of like coordination, cultural competency, ensuring metrics to follow up, and ensuring efficacy. So through the chair, I will submit some of these questions for the other departments. Again, Madam Councilor, thank you for filing, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Councilor. And yeah, I'll send those questions on your behalf, alongside any other questions that my colleagues may have. Just want to make sure that, are we all good on questions? All right, great. So with that, I do want to thank our panelists. Yep. So I'm just thanking our panelists. And now we're gonna move forward with public testimony. I've been informed by Central staff that we have one lonely person who wants to testify. If you can just, please, John, if you can just come up to the podium and then please state your name, and you'll have 2 minutes to give your testimony. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Councilor Santana, Murphy, Pepin, Flynn, Anderson, and Durkin. Fortunately, I missed yesterday's meeting, which was almost as important as this meeting. I watched the whole thing on TV. I was impressed by some of the people that spoke, and it's an important issue. Safety, to me, well, I apologize for being late. I should have been here a little bit earlier, but this chamber should be full right now, as far as I'm concerned. I spent 30 years in the Boston Edison as an elected union officer, and my priority, because of what happens in the power plants and on the underground and the overhead, was priority to me. So safety means thank you, gentlemen. Jordan, Kearney, and Cash, and I'm missing one. Officer Conley, thank you. Thank you for being here. I only wish, and I don't want to get into it too much, but there's the priority and safety, right to me in this city, is the streets, the automobiles, and the tragedies that we're going through. And I could give you a list. I know this is a little bit off from but I want to sneak it in there because I'm hoping to be at a meeting someday where we have all the families that I know that have lost loved ones. And fortunately, I've been lucky, but there's so many people that I've gone through after the tragedies on the streets. And I'll just say, the last one, I just got a call, if you don't mind. Sometimes I wish that we had 5 minutes and the councilors only had 3. But I just visited a gentleman who's a good friend of mine, and he lost his nephew. He's devastated in the accident that happened at Andrew Square. And since that accident, and I know there were people here, the councilors that were there at the tragedy and all, and I really appreciate that. I couldn't get there because sometimes it gets too emotional, and I'm not a city councilor, and I know that they have a good way of speaking, and I'm not that great of a speaker, but this family is devastated, and I don't hear anything the first few days, and then nothing about who the people were that came down, and the witnesses said they were 70, 80, 90 miles an hour coming down, killed this young man who had everything to live for. He played with my friend's sons. He went off to college. He was into science. I mean, his whole life was ahead of him. And we're having people, now I'm going to talk about my town, South Boston. I could give you a list, and I wish that we could get that list in the future and present it here as to the amount of people that have died just on L Street, just L Street alone, from Day Boulevard down to the Edison. And then if you go a little further, you're at Preble Street, where a young lady got killed there. I need to see a meeting on that, and I need to see a lot more people. Right now, I would have loved to have seen, my good friends at the fire department. My son, by the way, my nephew was retiring today he's 65 years old, and he's retiring today he's a chief on D Street, and I'm going down there right from here with a little cupcake and a candle, and it's just to congratulate him. He was my first nephew 65 years ago. I was 15. I ran down the street yelling to everybody, "I'm an uncle." So I love this man, and he did all these years. And the firemen, the police, the EMS, the transportation department, they're all my heroes. They're the heartbeat of the city. And I could go on and on about this, but I want to thank you gentlemen for being here. I wish that there was all the councilors that had things to ask and say. Unfortunately, there's certain things that are more priority, but to me, this city, if it isn't safe, somebody turn out the lights and see you later. So I guess that's all I would say. Thank you for letting me go on for a couple of extra minutes. But Henry, you're one of my favorites, so keep up the good work, and thank you.
Thank you, John.
Pepin, could you repeat what you said on the Spanish, because I missed a little bit of it? I'm sorry. All right, thank you for allowing me to speak this long, and thank you to everybody. Yeah.
Thank you, John. Congratulations to your nephew, and thank you for his service to the city of Boston. I really appreciate you joining us. All right, I want to give if there's anything else that the current panelists want to say, I think, yeah.
Give a closing statement. Yeah, I think in the emergency management world, we can be a victim of our own success. We spend months writing a lot of plans that we hope that we don't ever have to utilize. In the lead up to the Boston Marathon, there's family reunification planning, course evacuation planning, and exercises that go on that we hope just the day of never get touched, and that we're not talked about during those events. And we see recently the federal administration putting a pause on federal grants. This is kind of a reminder of our reliance on these grants to fund a lot of the work that we do, and particularly the staff that operate within our office, and what that could mean potentially for them, either with existing grants or future grants availability. I'm very proud of the work that we do here in the city of Boston, and the close relationships and partnerships we have across departments and our work at the local, state, and federal level. I appreciate that this hearing was brought about due to recent events, and think that these new emerging threats are ones that we continually need to be looking at and making sure that we're better prepared for. There's just an overall need, and I think I'll do it every time we get the chance to be invited somewhere, to continue to advocate for funding of emergency management at the local level, and just ensuring that our staff are funded out of the city's operating budget and not reliant or beholden to some of these grants that have these deadlines and end dates. I appreciate the continued conversation and being invited to speak here today.
No, really, thank you. Thank you to the whole panelists for being here. For this informative conversation. I know that my colleagues, at least sponsors here, really care about this topic, and I know we're going to be having further conversations on this issue. I want to thank the panelists, members of the public, and my colleagues for your participation in today's hearing. And special thank you to Councilor Murphy, Councilor Flynn, and Councilor Perpen for sponsoring this hearing. And again, I want to thank the panelists, Chief Jordan, Deputy Chief Kearney, Captain Connolly, and then President Cash from joining us with Frontier Security Strategies. Really appreciate all of your time. With that, this hearing on docket number 0163 is adjourned.